Usually I'm all for the creation of more horror. Movies, graphic novels, music, video games, you name it. But there's one medium that seems to have trouble making consistently compelling creeps, and that's TV. Anthologies tend to be hit and miss, and serialized shows often miss the mark. There are exceptions, of course, but they're not exactly common. Most are watchable, and some are indeed excellent, but there are horror shows out there that really aren't worth the time. And because TV shows usually run for at least a season, they require more time to consume. Hello horror heads, and welcome back to the Scariest channel on YouTube, Top 5 Scary Videos. I'm your horror host, Keegan Hughes, and today we're going to be taking a look at the top 5 horror shows that should have never been made. If you decide the bottom of the barrel isn't your thing, there are plenty of wicked horror TV shows curated in our Top 5 Scary TV Shows playlist. And if you want a different kind of bite-sized horror content, head on over to the new channel Top 10 Central Dark, where Lucy and Joss will be reacting to all sorts of terrifying stuff. Wicked! Let's get started. Coming in at number 5, we've got 2-sentence horror stories. There are a million different ways to tell a scary story. The tale told by a campfire is a classic, and a short film can encapsulate a whole slew of awesome ideas. But not all of these chronicles need to be turned into live-action TV shows. In fact, many of them should not be adapted for the screen, regardless of screen size. The 2-sentence horror story is a prime example of something that works perfectly in its native form. It doesn't need to be changed. The folks behind 2-sentence horror stories didn't get that memo. Oh, this was made by the CW? I guess that makes sense. So in this show, simple, punchy, short format horror stories are taken and adapted into little episodes of television. The whole point of a 2-sentence horror story is that the reader is supposed to fill in the gaps. It's not supposed to be long-winded or explained down to the smallest detail, but the show does it anyways. I mean, it's hard enough to adapt internet terror into traditional media, like stuff like ARGs and jump scare video games work wonders with creepypasta. So why are you trying to shoehorn them into a TV show format? I suppose some have done it well, like the folks over on Sci-Fi that put together Channel Zero, but that's a rare occurrence. I just don't understand why this show has to exist. Just read the 2-sentence horror stories and appreciate them for what they are. Next, coming in at number 4, we've got Category 7, The End of the World. Come on, a disaster movie stretched out into a TV miniseries, and it's a sequel to another megastorm story? My goodness. This show is just an entire disaster, and I'm not just referring to the Category 7 hurricane featured throughout. It follows a FEMA scientist who has to chase these crazy storms in order to save the world. Storms have taken out Paris and are now threatening to annihilate the United States. There's also a subplot where some religious fundamentalists fake a plague in order to bring in new converts and end up kidnapping the kids of the main character and some government officials. Yeah, so it's kind of an out there tale. The production doesn't help either. I don't think any of the performances given are good, although some might be passable. And the special effects can be laughable quite often too, with plenty of nonsensical goofery. I don't know, do people actively crave disaster miniseries? If you're gonna go with something like this, you better make it big and self-contained. Anything else is gonna miss the mark. And speaking of things that aren't self-contained, Category 7 just has way too many characters. I feel as if I forget who I'm supposed to care about and who's just storm fodder. It introduces so many people in such a short span of time, it feels like I'm watching Too Many Cooks again, but without any of the inherent entertainment value in that gem. Oh, and this aired just 2 months after Hurricanes Katrina and Rita hit. Yeah, maybe someone should have read the room. Maybe it was good for ratings, I don't know. Coming in at number 3, we've got Ghost Whisperer. Here's a fascinating little piece of horror history, the world's most melodramatic horror TV show. This show is so sentimental it almost hurts. It's so syrupy that I can't in good conscience recommend it to anybody with diabetes or hypoglycemia. It could have been good too. Each episode could have introduced a cool or scary or fascinating ghost, and our grown-up sixth sensor could have figured out problems or just decided to get the hell out. But instead, we're treated to Jennifer Love Hewitt stumbling through cliche horror scenarios in order to teach ghosts that just look like people about how they died. Man, this show really ran for 5 seasons too. The ghosts feel mostly inconsequential. They just kind of act as vehicles for Melinda Gordon, Ghost Whisperer, to emote at the camera and engage in some steamy lovemaking from time to time. Although she never sleeps with the ghosts, which is kind of disappointing if we're being honest. I can see the frantic Google searches now. Does Ghost Whisperer boink ghosts? Like a lot of mid-2000s drama/something TV shows, Ghost Whisperer is just kind of boring. and just way too self-important and sentimental. It's the kind of stuff that really doesn't get made anymore because literally everyone on Earth got tired of it. Plus, streaming has done away with reruns and daytime TV. At least, I think it has. Coming in at number 2, we've got Baywatch Knights. They just don't do spin-offs like this anymore. Most spin-offs don't really deserve to exist in my opinion, but I'm sure a lot of other folks will disagree. But man, if this isn't the epitome of ridiculous spin-offs that jump the shark literally by existing, I don't know what is. Baywatch Knights. The whole point of Baywatch is being at the beach during the day, and then, you know, whatever else the lifeguards do that doesn't fall under the umbrella of lifeguarding. You know, it's concerned with the trials and tribulations of lifeguards. And because internet porn didn't exist back then and people needed something to watch after everyone else went to bed. But Baywatch Knights is many things, none of which take the place of Skinamax. The premise is that the cop from Baywatch decides he doesn't want to be a cop anymore. He ditches the uniform and forms a detective agency that runs out of a nightclub called Knights. Then David Hasselhoff's character Mitch decides to join him at the agency, you know, because? The first season of Baywatch Knights was simply a 90s detective show with some attractive folks solving crimes and getting into fights. It underperformed, so they decided to come up with a new angle. Sci-fi. That's right. Baywatch Knights tried its hand at being an X-Files knockoff. What a world we live in. The Hoff, taking down aliens and spirits from the comfort of a nightclub. You just can't make that kind of stuff up. A few episodes keep us near the water, you know, Baywatch's forte. We meet some sea monsters, run into a half-human, half-fish murderer. It's good stuff, but then it gets extra weird. There's radioactive dust from a space shuttle, there's an interdimensional laser, and Mitch even gets possessed by a demon who wants to take over the world. Yes, and we're still talking about Baywatch. Unfortunately, the pivot to paranormal investigation didn't help ratings much. I wonder why. So Baywatch Knights only existed for 2 seasons, and only one of those could be considered scary. Yeah, they probably should have left this one on the shelf. And coming in at number 1, don't watch this. I mean, if you say so, but really, this is quite the apt title. Like, really, don't watch it. It's not worth your time. It's a 5-part anthology put together for Netflix, each with a story clocking in at around 10 minutes. Not one of these tiny tales manages to make good use of this time. There's Friendship Bracelet, which features a girl obsessed with death, and guess what? She's also a murderer who attacks her classmates for pretty much no reason. Who could have seen that one coming? There's also a laughably bad hacker horror featuring a virtual reality helmet and some awful effects. And then there's an experimental film, I guess? It's kind of like a music video. Oh, and the final episode is called Antony Psycho. It's Anthony Porowski from Queer Eye acting like a lunatic for 10 minutes, which is kind of cool, I guess. The whole miniseries is half-baked. Actually, no, scratch that. It's a quarter-baked. It's still in the blender. The showrunners didn't really seem to know exactly what they were going for, and the directors of each short really ran with some weak ideas. Seriously, listen to the title. Don't watch this. Right on. Hopefully you can scratch these shows from your backlog at this point. Don't waste your time here unless Drek is your jam, which, I mean, is kind of true for me. I mean, I might give Baywatch Knights another shot. What do you think of the list? Did you watch any of these when they aired? Were you disappointed? What's the worst horror show of all time? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your more granular ones. The top 5 nursery rhymes that are darker than you thought. Prep for It says they had to hide darkness in rhymes so as to not piss off the religious nuts at the time. I feel like the rhymes still would have ticked some folks off. Anything that wasn't abject praise for the Lord was scandalous and devilry. Devin Smith says Humpty Dumpty was actually a cannon that fell from a castle wall and was too heavy to be put back and fixed. P.S. Thanks for the spell check, Jeremy Frost. Huh, I didn't know that. Although, unless it crushed somebody down below, I think the man splitting his skull is a more compelling story. Also, shoutouts Jeremy for that spell check. Trash Pondo Pond says Mary Mary is pretty grim too. The garden reference is in regards to Mary the Queen filling the graveyards by ordering too many executions. The pretty maids are all the widows waiting in line to mourn. Another classic. Man, those tunes are all pretty dark. John Clark says, first of all, you don't go up a hill to get water. Water flows downhill. Well, Jack and Jill found that out the hard way now, didn't they? Dark Star Nova says Rickabye Baby, I guess that's Rockabye Baby, was the worst one I heard of. All about a baby in a cradle in a tree in a storm that then falls. WTF. I don't think that's the same genre, but still the same era. Yeah, I almost forgot about that one. Can you imagine being the first person to hear that song? I'd be investigating the writer post-haste, looking for little bits of Cradle. And that's all the time we have for today. Before I drink embalming fluid, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe for more stray stalemates. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.